Hi, it's Wolf from StormTheCastle.com, and here on YouTube you know me as Epic Fantasy, and this is my latest tutorial. This is how to make a foam tape sword. See it? I actually made several of them. Tried a bunch of different techniques. This one's got a couple of little wrinkles in it. All right. And this one has a fuller in it. And I give you the template, right? And this is Robb Stark sword from Game of Thrones. So you can make a foil tape sword and you can make one from Game of Thrones. Same thing. So you can download that on the website. The link is in the URL. Let me talk a little bit first about this. I tried a bunch of different products to try to figure out what would be the best, because foil tape swords are kind of tricky. They're easy to wrinkle. Chrome tape from an auto parts store is the best. Works really well. You can apply it well, it wrinkles less. It's easier to work with, so $5. Get some if you can. I've been on vacation for the past 10 days. I haven't posted a video. Sorry about that, but thanks for sticking with me. If you're a subscriber, you've been wondering where Will is, I'm back. I got more projects coming up, including a sword sheath out of leather and something called a thaumatrope. Oh, I wonder what that is. Let's launch into the introduction, and then we will do how to make a foil tape sword. Right? Looks like steel, but it's tape, foil tape. And it is Robb Stark sword from Game of Thrones. Thank you. Dioramas, origami, catapults, and treasure shades, telescopes, terrariums, bonsai trees, and paper games, swords and shields, and real blacksmithing, model rockets, animation. I teach the art of real creation. StormTheCastle.com. Let's make something. Okay, print up the template. The link is in the description of this video down below. Take a look there. You can get the link to this PDF. And then you cut out the various pieces. Really quite easy. I make it really easy for you with this. Now you put together 4 of the pieces, A1, A2, A3, and A4 to make the sword like this. And if it's too large for your foam board, don't hesitate to trim the point on that sword to make it a little bit shorter. It's quite okay. And now trace out all the pieces. And there's only one of these in the template, but trace out 2 of these. So you're going to need 2 pieces of foam board, and then cut out all those pieces. Now here's a tip on cutting foam board. You make 3 passes. The first pass you just cut through the top piece of paper. The second pass you cut through the foam, and the third pass you finally make the cut. And that's how you get a nice cut, smooth cut with foam board. So go ahead and cut out all those pieces. And let me show you how to glue them together. And you have an option. There's 10 pieces here. You put that piece down, you put a handle piece on top, 1 handle piece, and then you put your 2 sword blade pieces on top, and you would glue each of these in sequence. You put the second blade piece on top. You put the 2 handle inserts in like this. There's 1. There's 2. You put another handle piece on it. You put the guard piece on it. And then you put the pommel pieces on, just like that. 1 on top and 1 on the bottom, and you'll see me scrounge to put that one, squeeze that one underneath. So this is how you glue it. And you get some options. We did it both ways. You can do the foil for the sword first, put that on, and then glue it together. Or you can glue it all together and put the foil on it afterwards. And see, there's 6 layers there. Now sand that up to make it all nice and smooth. Now if you want the blood groove, you can do this a couple of different ways. You can do it ahead of time, or you can do it now once the sword is glued together. Make a 1/2 inch gap right down the middle of that sword blade on both sides, like this. Right in the middle, it's a 1/2 inch wide. That's called the fuller. And end it here 3 or 4 inches from the end. Don't go all the way to the point, because that's how the real sword is, like that. The Robb Stark sword. And then cut the foam, just the top layer of paper, both left and right, and on the end, both ends, and then peel that paper off. Now to make it look like a groove, fold a piece of sandpaper over, or emery paper, like this, and then do that. So it makes like a rounded groove in that. Easy sword to make. Here's a detail work. I wanted to say something. The more details you put on like this, the more difficult it's going to be to apply the foam. When you get a fuller on it, it makes it difficult. And when you put an edge on it like this, see this edge? You do that both left and right. And you, on the other half of the sword too, that this glues to, you would do that same thing if you wanted a sharp edge on it. But that does make foiling it much more difficult when you get all that variation in surface. So now here's foil tape, and foil tape is very challenging. But the best way to do that is to just peel it as you use it, right? And if you get a fuller, that complicates it. See what I'm saying? You have to try to compensate for that fuller, so you only do half the sword like this, and then you would do the other half. But you do this half like this, and then you fold it over, peel the rest of the tape, and then fold it over and finish it. And you do the same thing on the other half, so you got left and right. But that's because of the fuller, because you can't compress the foil down into that fuller. And then add any patches as needed, depending on how thick your foil, how wide your foil is. Ours didn't wrap all the way around, so we used an extra piece on the backside like this. You know, and just compress it with your finger like this to try to keep it nice and smooth. But the foil tape is challenging. The chrome tape in an auto body store is much, much better because it's thicker. It works easier. Now, if you want to do more details, you can do something like this on the guard, where you shave off it to make it kind of like triangular. That's more realistic, and then sand it smooth. See? See that? It does look nice, and it does look nice when the sword is done. It's more realistic. And you would do the same thing, and I'll actually show you that on the pommel, on the handle later. But that does make taping it challenging. See, you do the same thing on the handle if you want. And it's easy here because we're going to use duct tape on the handle, so it doesn't make it that challenging. You know, so sand everything nice. That's it. You know, if you make the sword, make sure you send me a picture. I will put it on my website. I have literally, I couldn't tell you how many, hundreds of pictures of my projects that people have made, and I love to get those pictures, and I love to put them on the website. I have a page, well, like 25 pages of projects from people. So now the chrome tape, and I got this nice wide stuff, which is really nice, and I put a link to this on the tutorial on the website, so you can buy this from Amazon if you don't want to go to like an auto parts store. But my local auto parts store had it. So the best thing to do with this is, and I do like this extra wide stuff because it applies in one coat. You just peel off some of the backing and apply it in stages like this, a little bit at a time, and rub it with a rag. Now, when I did this one, I got the whole surface of the blade looking really good except for that one spot down there where there's a couple of wrinkles. But watch this. See how that comes out like this? Look, see it? It just slides out. So I started out a little weak, but then I really got in the rhythm of it, and you just peel a little bit of paper, wipe it down, and then it actually applies very nicely. So with a little bit of practice, you can get this looking pretty good, like nice flat steel. But it really shows any imperfections in the foam board. Like my hands were wet and I touched the foam board, you can see my fingerprints how that distorted the foam. But look, see how good that looks? That looks really good. People on first glance will think it's real steel. So we want to make the ending on a corner because that's very, on the side of the blade, because that's very, it's kind of hidden. So trim it like this along the side, and then you can fold over that last piece and do the same thing. We'll fold it over a little bit and then wipe it down, rub it down with a cloth, a soft cloth, and progress along the whole length of the sword, folding it over to finish it off. There we go. So in this sword was much easier to do because you saw in the intro that we made actually 3 of them, and we actually ran a couple of test pieces, which is sword lengths. I also tried this, which has a lot of promise, but I couldn't quite get it right. You might want to try this. Leave the backing on the foil tape or the foil chrome tape. Put some glue on your sword and then apply the foil to it without removing the backing. I thought, boy, that might be a great way to do it. And for the most part it was, but it still wrinkled in a couple of sections, and I didn't get a chance to continue trying, and I was like, you know, I've spent enough time on this sword. I got to move on to other projects. But see, now, we didn't peel it and stick it. We left the paper on there, but look at that crease across there. I had difficulty with those creases. So you might be able to get it. So that's about it. Gold foil tape for the guard. And you can paint your guard if you want, if you don't have gold tape. But boy, that gold tape does look good. You know, this sword is silver and gold. Silver and gold. And then, of course, gold for the pommel, because that's how Robb Stark's sword is. And then the handle. Put some duct tape on that handle, or paint that handle as you prefer. And then finish it off with the pommel nut. Cover that in foil, or paint it gold and glue that on, because that every sword, just about every sword, has one of those. That actually holds the handle on the tang of the sword, so it's very authentic. But it's a nice little detail. It's in the template. There you go, and your sword is done. Wow! Thank you very much for watching. We tried looking for foiled sword tutorials. We couldn't find anything good, so we decided let's spend a little time showing you guys how to do it and what potential it has. Here's some more projects. A couple more game. You know I have hundreds of sword projects. But on top there is forging nails to make the Game of Thrones throne. That was fun. See? And down below is ice. That is Ned Stark's sword. That's a big sword that's actually very strong. I really like that project. It was a long time ago, and I only remember little bits and pieces of it. But I was a merchant. I had a small shop, and I wanted to grow and get better and do well. And I managed to finally get an audience with a local man who was like the prestigious, wealthy merchant. He owned many shops, and he had a lot of fame and money. He was very wealthy, and he finally was going to come and check out my shop and tell me how to do better. And he had traveled the Silk Road, and that was one of his journey to become a merchant, and so he had a good reputation. He told me after spending some time with my stuff in my shop, he said, you have to sell the sizzle and not the steak. And I didn't. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, people, they don't care about steak. It's when you put the steak on the hearth, what happens? It sizzles. It makes that noise. It attracts, like, it's just attractive. That's what catches them, and that's what you got to do to become successful. You have to sell the sizzle and not the steak. And I didn't agree with that. I don't want to do that, and I never have done that. I didn't follow his advice. And at one point I asked him, I said, why do you do this? And this is what made me, this sword made me think of this memory from the past. He looked me in the eye after I asked him, why do you do this? And he said, silver and gold, silver and gold. Well, I don't advise you to be the same way. I think you should, work on the stake of yourself and on the stake in your life and the things you do. And don't worry about the sizzle, and don't chase after the silver and gold. I don't see anything in it. That famous wealthy merchant, he's been dead a very long time now, and I'm willing to bet, silver and gold isn't very important to him anymore. A mystery abounds.